This is Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year, and we then discuss our memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I am Pete.
And I'm Giff.
And this is the last episode of 1990. We'll have to remember at the end of this, Pete, that you're going to have to close that yearbook.
Don't give it away. Don't give away the ending to the audience.
Closing it down tonight. It's been a good time. 1990 was a great year. And we've had some good topics. So why don't we just go to you? Because we talked about my choice and Gifford's choice. So what's your choice?
My choice was one of the funniest shows in my view of all time. I chose because it was written, or it's one of the funniest comedians of all time, Bob Newhart. I chose Newhart. A show that brought me a lot of great memories. Should I just dive right into my little overview that I did?
The Newhart show of the 80s, not the Bob Newhart show of the 70s.
Correct.
Or is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it may have all just been a fever dream at the end.
A little bit of a what do you call it? A teaser there for the
show
end of
that
the
was
episode.
on when we were alive to watch.
Correct.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I made a little overview. We'll just start with my kind of memories of the show and watching it. That I wrote here. Are you ready for that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
I would like to check in on your overview.
Okay, here it is. Newhart, for me, was one of the first shows I can ever remember watching. In retrospect, it definitely was one that I could have considered to be comfort TV. It combined an incredible ensemble cast of characters, storylines, and most of all, the absolutely brilliant comedy of Bob Newhart. As a kid, George was probably my favorite because, in my view, the comedy he presented was most adaptable to a child's sense of humor. Also, this was my first experience that I can recall with a true, quote, catchphrase with, "Hi, I'm Larry, this is my brother Daryl, and this is my other brother Daryl." As I grew older, I became better able to understand the brilliance of Bob Newhart himself and how the show incorporated one of his most famous brands of comedy that we saw in the episode that we're about to talk about, the one-sided phone call that Newhart always did in his stand-up routine. And that's exemplified here in the pilot. That's my high-level overview. Gifford, What were your thoughts of the show?
Well, right off the bat, the intro music pulls you in.
Oh,
yes.
Oh my, that was mine.
Sorry.
Talk about comfort TV. That intro music, that's it right there.
Yes, yes, that song itself just pulled you in.
So it brings you right back to the living room on Rural Route 2, Russell, Minnesota.
You were able to actually watch this show.
I was, yes. And I mean, it's just such a sweet show, obviously PG, humor. And like you said, Newhart is just an American treasure. And he does just such a great job. Very, very dry delivery on everything. And you've got this cast of characters that, are so unique and fun. Like you say, there's the catchphrase, you've got the bits that they incorporate that come through show after show. And it's just, like you say, it is comfort food. It's something for the whole family. You can sit down and just really enjoy watching it. And it was fun to go back and view a few episodes, more than two in my case for this episode, but it was just great to relive a little bit.
I don't know if you could say it was completely PG, though. Not in the episode that not in the finale. Well,
even the first one.
It was the first one, right? The Daughters of the American Revolution. That was the pilot.
Yes.
So this show was from 82 to 1990, and so this is one of the. You said it was a family show, and even though you just said it's not PG, it is, and
it sure is.
It's one of my favorite shows of the 80s, and part of it is because my siblings were home until most of the 80s. My brother left at the end, but I remember watching the show with most of my family members. I especially remember, though, my dad watching the show and laughing and loving the show, and my mom too. And so it was always like this cool show that I could watch with them. And it was, it's an adult show, but as a kid, it's kind of like Cheers. I could watch
Mhm.
Cheers and love it and get it, even though, it really wasn't directed towards me at all. Bob Newhart's sense of humor was great. I really relate to that. I thought Mary Fran was way cute growing up.
Oh yeah.
We talked about a lot of our crushes, and usually they're the younger ones. But as a mother age person, she was one that I actually liked as a kid. They used to remember those 80s movies, those made for TV movies that they made where they took like all these not characters, but actors from all the TV shows and they threw them into one. Like there was one I remember specifically called Dance Till Dawn, and it had all these different people in it. And Mary Fran was in one of those, and I was like, that was one of the people I wanted to watch. You guys remember those movies?
It's not coming to mind.
They were like, they did it a lot. There was like one every year, and they were like made for TV, and they took all the like stars of different shows from different networks, and they threw them all into one movie. And somebody out there is going to know what I'm talking about. So Peter Scolari and Julia Duffy, I thought were hilarious as a kid. We'll talk in this episode how Gifford, you watched a few episodes. I've watched almost the entire series a couple of times.
Okay.
And what I didn't know until I got older and watched it is that those guys weren't even in the first couple of seasons, or at least Michael wasn't. And that kind of really changed how the show went, I thought, too. But Larry, Daryl, and Daryl, I mean, forget about it. They were like the greatest. As a kid, that's the part you could always laugh at and look forward to. And they were great. I also loved the inn setting. And I loved the small town side characters growing up in a small town on Rural Route 1. I've never been to Vermont, but even though it's nothing like rural Minnesota, at least in the southern half of the state, you could relate to that whole thing about all these, crazy cast of characters in the small town and everybody knowing everything about everybody. And the whole thing just really hit me. I don't know. I love the inn. I love the setting, the whole, the setup of the show. And so it was great. And it was something that we could watch together.
I think I alluded to Bob Newhart's comedy earlier. I think he was such a master of comedic timing. I think that I talk about those one-sided phone calls that he did on the show and in his act. It's like he knew, just like he would say his line and then pause, and he knew just the exact right amount of time to pause, and then he would say his joke. And it like just built up that little bit of suspense, what's going to be next. And then he would say it, and then you just burst out laughing. And I don't know, he could do that brilliantly.
It's funny that you say timing, because he does have great time, and that's why he's a great comedian. But he uses that stutter all the time, which you think could really disrupt your timing. And there's a few cases where I think maybe he kind of drags out a little too long. But like, it's part of the bit, and it's part of the timing, is that whole just aggravated stuttery way of speaking that he had.
Right. It's like when he gets a little bit confused or angry, he'll throw that in there, and then you're right, it adds to the comedy brilliantly.
Well, because I think what it does is it shows his consternation so well.
Yeah.
And that's where
flustered.
He's flustered. He's just like, so that's the beauty of his.
He has a generally calm demeanor, but that's his way of demonstrating that he is pissed off or confused.
He never looks angry, but you can sense it always by the way he is talking and responding.
Yep.
Right.
Because he is always calm. He never, he doesn't ever really show anything.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so I selected 2 episodes. I call this our first and the last episode after the Preacher Rose song that we kick off the show. Those that don't know may not realize that our intro music is called The First and the Last by Preacher Rowe, and I thought it would be appropriate for us to watch and review the pilot, the very first episode of Newhart, and then the finale, which of course is the last episode.
And aired in 1990.
And it aired in 1990, so that's why it's apropos for this month.
And I think, just before you go, the beauty of this is you get both casts and both time periods of the show, because the first year or two were so different, and this way we can hit on all of that. So
I do kind of wish, in retrospect, a little bit that I would have picked one where it was like in its prime, because there were some characters and jokes in the finale that are incorporated from the entire buildup of the show. Of course, we've seen it before, but I have not actually seen Newhart in maybe 30 years or more, whenever it was on. I don't remember sitting down and watching it a lot. Maybe it was in syndication a time or two, but certainly not a lot. But there were some jokes in the finale that you would get if you were a fan of the show, for sure.
So I did say I've watched it more than once. I actually, about 20 years ago, when we first got our first DVR, the show was on WGN, and I recognized that, and I just started recording the show, and it would play most of them in order, and so I really watched almost the whole series back about 20 years ago, and then I just, about last summer, I was watching it again because we had talked so much about it on this show, and you said it was on Amazon, so I probably watched about half of the series again. I didn't finish it. I haven't gotten that far, but I've watched it 1.5 times actually since back in the day.
Do you recall if there was a particular season that was better than the others? Like, of course, we talk about Seinfeld season 4, 3 and 4 are kind of the prime. Do you remember if there was a season that stands out?
No, that's the thing. Like, I was really curious what you were going to pick for like another episode or two,
right?
Because I think you'd almost have to do like what Gifford kind of did and look at the IMDb rankings and kind of go from there.
Oh yeah.
When you get into season 3 and 4 and it starts to take shape where Michael and Stephanie are on, and he starts to work at the TV station more, that's the parts you'd probably want to like look at. But it would be hard to pick one. So I like this this idea you had.
All right, sounds good. Well, without further ado, why don't I dive into my quick little synopsis of episode 1? All right. In the pilot, we are introduced to Dick Loudon and his wife, Joanna, as they arrive at the Stratford Inn, the setting for pretty much the entire series. The set is as much of a character as any of the actors. Dick and Joanna are reluctantly moving from a comfortable life in Manhattan and buying the quaint Vermont hotel. We are introduced to George, the friendly but somewhat dim-witted handyman who provides more than his fair share of laughs for the series. George is excited about the history, Dick is excited about the history of the place, including that James Madison stayed there once, but Joanna is not so sure. Eventually, though, he is able to convince her to agree to buying the place. Kirk Devane/Douglas, the compulsive liar and neighboring souvenir store owner, makes his introduction as well, although is not long-lived in the series. Dick finds a letter that exposes the sultry history of the hotel in the winter of 1775, and he delicately reveals this truth to the daughters of the American Revolution. They surprisingly embrace the history, and the Stratford Inn is propelled to a great start.
Because those women helped win the war.
They got right.
Soldiers
they
on there.
Sure did.
Mm-hmm.
They sure did. Anything that stand out about the first episode?
Well, can I talk about Kirk Devane first here? Let's just start with him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I rewatched the show last summer, because I had forgotten a lot even from that other time I watched it, and he's on, and I'm like, I hate this guy. First of all, the first thing he says, I'm a pathological liar. It's just a weird character trait to include, and it really makes it hard to get into what's going on with this guy. And he's so annoying. And I kept looking it up, like, am I the only one that thinks this? And I found online, he is one of the most reviled characters, I think, in like sitcom history. He lasted 2 seasons, and he was replaced by Peter Scolari. He actually is a pretty successful writer. He was more of a writer. He wrote the movie Back to School, and he wrote for WKRP. So he was like a thing in the 80s as a character and an actor on the show. I just found him to be the most annoying. And if you watch more, I mean, you've only watched the one episode. If you watch the whole season, you're going to be like, God, this guy sucks. So that's my views on Kirk Devane.
That's consistent with a comment I had on him, is because, I mean, they were trying to set him up to be like, that's his thing. He's a compulsive liar. But how exhausting did that get just in the first episode itself? It's like hard to keep up, and you don't know where he's going or what he's going to say next. But then he always just immediately says, oh, I'm lying about that, you know, and that there was nothing automatically you hate him. You're built to hate him.
The other thing about him that I read is that he, like Bob Newhart really clashed with him because, you know, he he was built in to be a pretty big part of the show. And Bob got a little bit like sick of him taking like his thunder away, even though he sucked. And so I think Newhart really got him canned after the second season. Like he had enough of him. He didn't want him stealing the spotlight or, with his hamming it up and all that stuff. So they didn't have a great relationship either, as far as I could tell.
Well, and like Pete
you
said,
bring that up. That's a good point. Hamming it up. I thought he was a character that was a little over the top. And this is not an over the top show. This is a show where most of the characters in the comedy, like we said about Newhart himself, he's not high temper or anything. He's pretty even tempered. And it's not like Seinfeld where everybody's shouting, and it's still funny, but like this is where everyone's pretty even keeled for the most part.
That I disagree with, because Michael and Stephanie are over the top.
Well, that's true.
They're ridiculous people. They would be what's his name from Succession would say, these are not serious people. And they're great though. They're funny because they play a role that fits and makes them funny. But they are, Michael is just stupid and ridiculous, and she's the most spoiled, pampered. But it fits the show, and they fit together because they become a couple. So I think it works. But that's how I disagree that they're not even keel in any way.
I think, like Pete said, if the Kirk character if they would have played that for an entire episode where he's saying stuff, this and that, and then it's revealed later on as the joke or the punchline what the truth is. I think that would have been a nicer way to go. But when he says something and then immediately follows it with, I was just lying. Like it deflates it so quickly and does become extremely annoying, right away. Right. Like for me, one of the parts that I thought was funny with his character was when we see Dick interviewing the maid. And she, he comes in and says, hey, why don't I let you show you around? And he goes, what are you studying? And she said, literature and like Greek philosophy.
Yeah, it's way high class up there.
Right. And his response is, well, you're in luck. That's what I studied as well. Like that's funny because
I did think that was funny too.
Yeah, because he's a liar. He's just a cad. He's trying to hit on this woman and do whatever he can to, gain favor. So that's funny. It's just when he says something and then goes, no, that's a lie.
But back to what Pete said about even keel characters. So the original maid before Stephanie for one season is her cousin, Leslie Vanderkillen. And she is the most even keeled character. She's like, I think she got kicked off mostly because she was just boring. They didn't give her anything to do. She was a smart, funny, pretty girl. But like she didn't add to the humor and she didn't really do anything. And when they added Stephanie, it gave it a whole new because she could spar with Dick and Joanna, and this other woman was just nothing. She was
too
just
vanilla.
Boring. Too vanilla. That's the word.
Yeah. Which is tough to find in Vermont. So.
All right. Anything else to add about that first episode?
Oh, I got
one of the other things I did like about the maid interview was when she was talking about how I suppose you're not looking for, a college graduate who's going to Dartmouth or whatever and
trying out for the U.S. ski team.
It's trying out, and Dick's reply is, no, that's pretty much what we're looking for.
That's the line. That line down. I love that. It's pretty much what we're looking for in a maid. But I'm bummed.
I do want to talk briefly about, I had mentioned in my synopsis about the set of the hotel itself.
And how it doesn't make sense?
What do you mean how it doesn't make sense?
Oh, how doesn't it?
Elaborate.
What do you mean? Yeah, because, from the out, are you talking about the outside of the, not working with the inside?
It's just, they go up to the side and they go down this hallway, which doesn't seem to exist from the outside. And most of it should probably be overhead, and it just doesn't quite over there on the right. So if you're looking at the set and they go up through that door on the right, it's like if you look at it from the outside, there's nothing over there. There wouldn't be anything over there.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't.
That's over.
It reminds me of the Brady Bunch, where the house from the outside and the inside don't. This is closer, but they don't really match up with the way they're running it.
Yeah. But I do like Pete's point that the set is one of the characters, and we see it right away in the first episode with the sticky door.
Yeah.
And of course the one-sided conversation. Pete, I'm sure you've got some notes that you'd like to get into on that.
My favorite.
I just no, now I'm thrown off kilter. Go ahead. Go ahead. What's
My
your
favorite line by George is when they first meet him, and he he's such a dope, and he's like sad, and I don't know what he says. He's meeting Dick, and he says, "I bet I won't get a raise," and Dick just goes, "No."
Well, yeah, Gifford, to your point, you're bringing up the one-sided conversation where he's talking to the guests that had just checked in. These are their very first guests ever, and then they call, and he's taking the first complaints ever from the hotel. And the first thing is he's given the weather forecast. They're obviously asking about what's the weather forecast for tomorrow. It's like, why do you ask? Oh, you don't have a window.
Did you think it was weird that they couldn't just move him to a different room either?
A little bit.
They never offered to move rooms.
I thought that too, but maybe the hotel isn't set up yet. They weren't expecting.
Well, it's not
yet. Maybe they don't.
But I bet there's a room that has a window still, at least.
Well, and the whole part of the conversation where he's talking about, yes, it might get a little cold in there. Have you checked the radiator? Maybe you put your hand on it. You don't have a radiator. Oh, but your wife's getting a little steamed. Like, that is just so. It's just so perfect.
That's how he did it. It would just build up. It would start out sounding innocently enough, and then it would build and build and build throughout the whole routine. And that's what was hilarious about it.
Well, and so they have this inn, and of course it's in disrepair. They have to get it all fixed up. And there's the part where George is talking to Dick, and he goes, "Hey, I fixed that shutter that had fallen." He goes, "Oh, I didn't know we had a shutter that had fell." He goes, "Yeah, I knocked it off when I fixed the window." He goes, "Oh, I didn't know there was a window that was broken." And there's another. He said something. "Well, I broke that when I was
cleaning it."
Well, and that's before the people call, because that sets up why there's no window in their room.
and
it's a long-running joke.
Dick says something about how maybe we can get this place fixed up if we have George stop trying to repair things.
Yeah.
A
couple other things that pop up.
The other thing I love about when these guests come in, Dick's like, "Well, we just opened. We're not ready." And of course his wife's like, no, we need to get money. So check them in. So they have no idea how much it is to charge these people for a room. So he looks at the past ledger and he goes, "That'll be 1 farthing." I mean, because of course this inn opened in 1774.
Right.
But even that's funny or interesting because they clearly set it up right from the beginning. This is low stakes for them. They don't need the money. Yeah. He makes money from writing books. And so if it bombs, but she wants the money so bad. So it's kind of like, it's like they didn't need to do that, but you can tell she wants to get going. But that brings up, so there's 2 other things I wrote down here so far. So Kirk runs the Minuteman Cafe, which you don't see that set yet in this episode, but that becomes a big place because eventually Larry, Daryl, and Daryl run that. And I always loved when you got to see the cafe. But do you think it's weird that Dick writes these how-to books? Because it doesn't seem like he's capable of doing anything.
Right.
And the titles are just ridiculous. And it's like, who is buying these books? It's the whole setup there is just funny too, because it's like they could make him a successful writer, but the way they do it is like a joke because he doesn't seem like a guy that could ever pull off the stuff he's writing about.
Well, the speech he gives to his wife that inspires her to go ahead with this purchase of this inn is from his building your own patio cover.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense either.
And I think another one that he wrote was get to know your Harley. Like, does Dick Loud look like a guy who knows?
And it goes on. There's so many. But like in one of the first episodes after this, he has George build a new bookcase and he tells George to follow the directions in his book exactly. And George is like, this isn't going to work this way. And he says, George, just follow the directions. And when he does it, George is right. It doesn't work out right. None of the books fit. So that would just show that how is he making money from these books when he clearly doesn't even know what he's doing?
Right.
So you mentioned that the cafe next door. I don't actually remember. Maybe I'll have to go back and watch some more episodes because one of the points I was actually going to ask you guys is, was there ever any scenes that weren't inside the hotel itself.
Tons of them. There's the cafe, and then there's the town hall. There's tons in the town hall when they go down and they meet all the people. And one of the first episodes, Dick is running for city council, and you meet Chester, the mayor, and the other guy, Jim, which I love those guys. They're in the next episode. But so those are probably the three main sets. But there's a few other things you see as well. But town hall and the cafe are in a lot.
Okay.
And then, of course, you have your main room in the inn, but then you have the set in the kitchen.
Right. You had the kitchen,
and you have George's room, which is like a whole nother area, and so there's
the study.
Okay. And Dick's study.
Yeah. Can we get into the Daughters of the Revolution?
Sure.
So it turns out the inn was a brothel in 1775.
Yes. Yeah, because he finds these letters, and it's from service members, and one's a thank you note to, I'm assuming, the madam at the time, and it's just absolutely great. He refers to the mothers of some of these daughters could be considered a fun date, I think is how he referred to it.
But when he's talking to the Daughters of the Revolution, did you get the sense that you thought they knew what it was like? Because they kept wanting him to talk about the winter like they were excited about it. I felt like they knew and they just wanted to spit it out. But it turns out they didn't, so they were surprised.
I don't think they did.
But he turns it all around and he makes it work, and everybody's happy, of course, at the end.
What I love
the war because of these women.
Yeah. Well, and I love how he talks about how it opened in 1774. And then somebody bought it in the 1800s, like just tried to skip right over it. They, of course, catch that.
No, go back to the winter of
1775.
Specifically, they all wanted to talk about that one winter.
And I think one of his other comments was that they may be considered daughters of a 3-day pass.
Yeah.
Which is just great. But of course, Dick spins it as, this is a harsh winter and the boys came here and they got their fighting spirit back. And if not for these, wonderful women here, the war may have been lost. And, of course, then, these women of the revolution come around and they're proud of their ancestors again. And, everything's
Sex
great.
Saved America.
That's right. Well, and then, of course, the last line of the episode is when Joanna comes in and sees the women all happy, and her line is, "It certainly turned the trick." And of course, Dick, covers her mouth and tries to escort her out of the room as fast as possible.
And that's your punchline to the whole episode. And
yeah,
it's like,
and it ends.
Come on, who uses that phrase in any other context besides prostitution?
Yes, it's outstanding. So excellent first episode to kick it off. Again, you get to know some of the main characters, and like Brad said, there's more to come, but you do hit Dick and Joanne and George, of course, are the big three in this episode.
Yeah, it was excellent character development and setup for the entire series.
Probably Stephen Campman and the maid. They are the main characters too. They don't last, but they're
right.
They are part of the core group for the first season.
Correct. Yep. So,
all right, do we want to move on?
Yeah, give us a little rundown of that finale there, Pete.
This famous finale that everybody thinks is one of the best things ever, which when you watch it, you might be like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's a departure.
But it was the way nobody remembers the episode itself.
I know, that's the thing. I wonder how many people would go back and watch the episode and be like, what is happening here? Because you remember the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the entire episode itself would fly today in 2024, but I'll say that. Fast forward to the finale. The episode opens with a typical small town vote on what the official town fish should be. After a briefcase is made for the bullfrog, they settle on the flounder. After the vote, an Asian patron at the restaurant identifies himself as a prospective buyer of the town, wishing to turn it into a golf course. The townsfolk object to this until he reveals the dollar amount he's willing to spend. Everyone is more than happy to accept the lucrative offer. Everyone, that is, except Dick and Joanna. Dick honorably rejects the offer due to his love for the Stratford Inn, which the buyers were able to simply build their golf course around it. Everyone then goes their own separate ways. We then fast forward 5 years for their planned reunion. Everyone is coming back wearing suits and telling stories about what they've been up to now that they are rich. Even Larry, Daryl, and Daryl got married and were somehow able to get a word in to their wives that just kept talking. Finally, Dick is knocked unconscious by an errant golf ball and eventually wakes up back in his old TV series, The Bob Newhart Show, perhaps the most original finale of all time.
And it was all just a dream. None of it ever actually happened.
With,
right. Of course, the wife, too, from the show who came on to do it.
Right.
Now, as a kid, I'm 14 years old watching this. I had no idea what was going on there at the end. I had my parents had to explain it.
Yeah.
So that's where that's where they lost the young people a little bit there. I can look back now and say that was really, unique and great, but I had no idea who that woman was and what was happening.
So I watched the episode right before this, the second to last episode, and it was pretty much on brand. There was storyline with the maid and Michael. Good Lord, why can't I remember her name? Stephanie, and one of her old rivals comes back, and there's kind of a deal with that and their new baby. So it's pretty much right on brand. But then this finale comes in, and I really do think because it's such a departure from the rest of the show, it really is just setting up that final scene in the bedroom of the old Bob Newhart show with his old, his wife, Emily, and everything like that. So it's they just took a big swing, and there was some fun stuff in it. But it really was just like, holy cow, we're going off script.
I think watching it now, knowing what's going to happen, makes it different because at the time you're watching it, you might have been a little bit confused. But watching it now, knowing how it ends, it's like, okay, well, this is pretty crazy, but it's a dream, and it's all just, and he gets knocked. It's so you can see it coming, and so even though it's weird, you
had an Asian George, an Asian Stephanie.
That was excellent.
That was funny the way they played those roles. Stephanie was great.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Well,
and did you notice
George...
one of the?
Go ahead.
Well, that was where one of the things that I noticed is when they had the Asian Stephanie like kicking the door open. That I know was something that regular Stephanie did. That's what I was kind of calling to when you had to kind of watch the show, and then that would kind of set up for the finale. That way, there's some kind of inside jokes that way.
And did you notice that one of the three women that Daryl's married was Lisa Kudrow?
Yes, I believe that was Daryl number one.
Yeah, you didn't notice that, Pete, because the quality of what we watched wasn't great because you had to find it on YouTube. But I kept when she started talking, the voice I could really tell, and then I just double checked and looked it up, and it was indeed Lisa Kudrow.
Yep. Oh my God, I did not notice that at all. I gotta go watch.
Yeah, she was the middle one.
I gotta watch.
And of course,
again,
one of the other huge things in this episode is that the Daryls speak. They have one line in the entire run of the show, and it is to yell in unison, quiet, at these very loud and boisterous Long Island wives of theirs. So that was, obviously great.
We should mention too that the Asian fellow who's going to buy everything is Getty Watanabe from 16 Candles and other
Long
80s
Duck Dong.
movies.
Long Duck Dong, yes.
It's fun to see him. This is where I brought up earlier. If you watch the whole series, they're in it a lot. So Chester Wanamaker is the mayor. He's in 37 episodes of the series, and then Jim is his sidekick. He's in 33 episodes. Those are two of my favorite side characters. We did side characters when we talked about Parks and Rec a year ago, and at the time I wasn't thinking of these guys because I wasn't watching it, but they would fit in. They're funny, and they fit that small town. They're perfect small town guys. Well, and I love how they build off each other. That's the thing. It's the interaction, almost like they're married, that makes them so good.
Yes. Well, going back to when Pete was talking about the town meeting where they're picking the town fish, and George, of course, suggests that the bullfrog should be the town fish, and it comes up that, well, that's not that far off because we did elect the flying squirrel as our town bird. So it's just one of those just idiotic side things that just gets slipped in there. It's like, oh my God, this is so great.
Going back to the ending here, my note that I wrote down was that you might say this episode is jumping the shark if you don't know what's coming at the end, because it is just like, it's nuts.
It was
the middle portion.
It did take a sharp turn from the.
You got Joanna wearing kimonos and that hair, and it's like, is this okay? Yeah. Can we do this today? I don't even know.
Right.
There was. I'm not going to repeat it, but I texted you guys which line I was referring to. But there was some joke specifically that would not fly today in 2024.
Early in the episode,
early on
at the town meeting, yeah.
Oh, for sure. I did a couple lines that I wrote down here. Classic Michael line at the end when they're like hugging and saying goodbye, and he says to Joanna, "May I nuzzle your nape so I can remember your scent?" And that's just, the way that guy talked was always hilarious and over the top.
Well, and when they go in to hug, and of course Joanna's a very warm person, and she's gonna hug, these lifelong friends goodbye, and then Dick, how he's so uncomfortable and like putting his arms in front of himself. He doesn't like extend his arms to hug, he just kind of protects himself from the hug.
That's almost exactly how I would handle that situation.
Yes.
Who was it that had a boat slip that was just a few slips down from Robert Goulet?
That was the mayor. Wasn't it?
Oh, that was the mayor. Yeah, that sounds like something you'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other one I had is, so at the end there, he's talking to his old wife, and she's like going to bed, and she's annoyed. And I love the line where he goes to her, you really should wear more sweaters.
Right.
That's because that's what Mary Fran always wore, and that was a funny line. That was a really Bob Newhart way to end the show as far as that line goes.
Right. Well, and of course he wakes up in a panic, and he turns the light on, and she, of course, rolls over, and that's the big, reveal, and everybody goes nuts in the audience. And he's telling the story of this dream that he had and how disturbing it was, and she's just like, yeah. And then the only part she picks up on is when he says something about, and I was married to this attractive blonde woman.
Yeah.
That kind of got her a little bit,
Not right away though. It's like she turned the lights back off.
Yeah, she wakes back up.
Like a minute later, she's like, blonde. He talks about these three woodsmen.
Yes.
I also liked that at the very end, it doesn't just cut off. You see them doing their goodbyes in front of the studio audience. That was a nice touch, because you don't usually see that, and I really enjoyed.
They did that more in the 80s on shows like that. I remember Family Ties did a curtain call like that, and some of the other shows. Certainly not anymore though. Yeah. But and then she finishes off by saying, "That's it. No more Asian food for you." Before
Thai food or
Japanese food.
I think it was Japanese food. She specifically said Japanese food
before bed.
Yeah. Yep. Great.
So it's a kind of, you could call it an uneven finale almost, because everybody remembers the great ending, but they might not remember what got there. But when you know the ending, it does fit. Like the craziness, the absurdity of it fits, because it's a dream and it's the end, and so it's building up to that moment, which obviously people loved.
Well, what other show has ever called back to a different TV show, completely different TV show? I mean, how many can? Yeah, but that's what's so original about it, and totally, you would not be expecting that at all if you're seeing this for the first time.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. And people like my parents that were watching it, they got it. Like, they were like, "Oh, this is it." For me, as a 14-year-old, I had no idea, but the adults in the room were just blown away.
I will say I do remember on at least one occasion during How I Met Your Mother, there was a part at the end of an episode where Barney was typing on his computer to the same music from Doogie Howser.
Yeah, that was great.
And it was the same cursor and screen, and he'd kind of look up and think for a minute and then smile to himself and then come back down and type the last little bit. And it's like that's genius right there.
I think we even talked about that because we did a How I Met Your Mother episode too. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a great moment.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, there's a finale that was very controversial too, and
I'm
I don't
still
know
not
if we're
real
ready
happy
yet
about
for
that one. Not real happy about that one.
Are we ready to go to this, Pete?
Let's do it. We our draft for tonight is the top 5 all-time finales, TV show finales. And so
Yes.
I am going to start it off with by batting leadoff, and then batting second will be Brad. And
No, it's Giff.
it's Gifford. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. It's going to be Gifford, and then in the 3 hole is Brad.
That's where you put the big hitter in the 3 hole.
Yeah.
That's right.
Big hitter. Don't know where the 3
All
hole
right.
is. Okay.
Tough choice. I'm actually gonna not original here, I guess, but I'm gonna start with Newhart.
All right. That's a great pick. I mean, we spoke about it
Okay,
tonight.
I'm having issues here. I didn't hear what you picked.
Oh.
Newhart.
Oh, you did pick
Newhart.
it. Okay.
Okay.
I'm having a lot of issues tonight with my computer, and I'm hanging in here.
Well, hang on just a little bit longer. We'll finish this bad boy up. I am going to go with a finale I think did a great job of wrapping up a great series, a short series. I'm going Ted Lasso.
I knew you were going to pick that.
And yeah. Well, there's a lot of great stuff left. I know that much.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I wrote down a bunch that I liked, but I don't remember how a lot of them ended exactly, other than that I know I liked them. Didn't hate them like some people hate some of these.
I had a lot like that too.
You took kind of the 2 obvious ones to me here. The rest are going to be different. I didn't get a lot of votes for this in my 1990 TV draft, but I'm going to pick Cheers because Cheers had a great ending.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just watched
it on my list.
So maybe this time maybe people will respond to this one.
Yeah.
But Stam at the bar in the dark alone. It's fantastic. And what a great series. And they were so good all the way to the very end.
Another one.
Just
It
how
was
he
to the
taps
bitter
bar
end,
those
which
3 times. Yeah.
bar close. Okay,
Yep.
I got
one
you.
of the most perfectly written series from start to finish, really, in my opinion. And I love just how they wrapped it up. And it'll bring a tear to your eye. I'm going to go with Schitt's Creek.
I saw
Great
that one coming
pick.
too.
Great pick, Pete. Oh boy. Okay. I'm gonna take Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm. Another good ending.
That is a great series.
I haven't heard many
they
people
wrapped it
complain
up
about
well.
that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with a show I referenced earlier. Another show that I think kind of ended at about the right time and did a great job. The whole final season was kind of different, but Parks and Rec just really never made a bad move, in my opinion. And it had a great ending. And again, you'll cry and laugh.
Yep.
All right. Well, mine is one that a lot of people didn't like at the time, and I didn't like it at the time as much either. But then the more I watched it back over, I'm like, this is a great way to finish it because it's not what you would expect, and then it's tied back. Yep, I'm going to Seinfeld. And how I thought about back to the first episode.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Isn't that button in the wrong spot?
Well, and not just that, because I was going to pick it. I didn't know if you guys would have it on your list because people hated it, but that very end is great how it ties back. But I just love the parade of all the characters. I mean, it was just such a brilliant way
them all back
for a show that just created so many great characters and things, and it got them all into that one. It's like, that was great. Lay off, people.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with you. I have it on my list, and the fact they brought all those people back is just and a perfect way to do it. How do you bring back that many characters in a short span? Well, you put them up on the stand, you have them in the audience, you give them a little, just a 2-second gig, and it's great. Yeah, great pick. Okay. I'm going to go with The Americans.
That was on my list.
Just a great way to finish it up with Stan and have Paige step off the train at the last second and end up back in Russia. I mean, they really did a great job with that entire series and did not disappoint on the finale.
Well, the one thing about that show, I think the first 2 seasons were great, and then it kind of dipped a bit. But then the last season was, when they actually brought it all together, and the finale was great.
Were there 5 seasons?
I thought there was 6.
Because I watched the first 3, and eventually I quit watching it, but I did go back and watch the last few, and because I wanted to see how it ended, because I was into it a lot there. But I agree, it dipped, and I couldn't. But it had a good ending. It had a very good ending.
Yep.
All right. Well.
All right, Brad. Did we? There we go.
And one that we just finished not too long ago is Better Call Saul. So Breaking Bad had a good ending, and so did Better Call Saul.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Had that on my list.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go with Friends. I thought that the way they tied it off was good. And then the final shot that I think they were going for was just in the apartment. The apartment was pretty much empty. They had moved furniture out, and then it just had the main characters. And then Ross and Rachel are together, kind of holding each other at the end. And then they left, and they were like, you know what? You want to go for one last cup of coffee? And then Chandler goes, where?
Yeah, it was a good one. Again, we talked about that show, one of our first episodes, and it was a little uneven in the last couple of years, but it was a great ending. They knew how to wrap it up.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna go with the show we spoke about 2 weeks ago. The finale was, second highest episode. It leaves a little to the imagination. People can wonder if Winnie and Kevin did do the deed, but it's a great voiceover at the end, letting you know where everybody's ending up. And I'm going to take the Wonder Years as my.
I did watch that one when we were researching, and it was a good ending.
Yeah.
All right. It's tough to pick because they all kind of run together here for me. But another show that was just one of my favorite sitcoms, and I think it's a little too underappreciated. And Captain Holt just died, and which was terrible. But Brooklyn Nine-Nine had a great ending, and such an underrated show. It should be up there with some of these other greats, which some people agree, but not everybody's watched it. It's
right.
It was fantastic.
All right, Pete, what do you got for your number 5? I got so many good choices here left on the board, but I'm going to go one specifically. This is a little bit off might be off of your radars a little bit because you might not be thinking of it in this context. However, I specifically remember watching this, and the way that this individual gave his final speech, it just tugged at your heartstrings. And it brings a tear to your eye as well. I'm going with The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson.
That is a little bit off, but good, interesting choice.
All right.
The way that he spoke about, I remember he delivered the line. It said something about, I just want to thank all of you for inviting me into your living rooms every night for the past whatever number of years. And
that's a good on-brand pick.
He was wiping the tears from his eye, and it was just the end of an era with that one.
You were a big fan of that show. I remember.
So I'm going to go with a show that only had one season. And I'm going to go with Band of Brothers. That final episode where, they're kind of done with the war and they're wrapping it all up. And again, there's a voiceover at the end showing these characters and where they moved on to. And it's just amazing to think that you see everything that they went through together. And now they're going to be entering, civilian life again and trying to find their way. These heroes going on to, mundane jobs. I just really thought it was a great way to wrap that up.
All right, last pick. Well, I kind of saved it for this one. I'm going to lose the poll here, I'm sure, if I didn't already. But
you
Pete picked
have already.
Seinfeld. Pete picked Seinfeld. I'm going to pick another highly controversial ending. Gifford isn't going to like it. I loved the ending. When I first watched it, I thought it was a really unique and great way to end the show, and I loved How I Met Your Mother. It's one of my all-time favorite shows, and considering what's left here, and I'm the last pick, it fits right in. I'm gonna go with it. I loved it. I mean, there's other ways they could have ended it, but it made sense. I understood what they were going for.
Mhm.
I understood why they did it, and it made sense, and I liked it. And I get why people hated it, but
I think the reason I wasn't a big fan was just because the entire last season was about Barney and Robin getting married, and then they just and Ted finally meeting the mother, and then they just took all of it and whipped it right around.
I get why people didn't like it.
The finale itself, standing by itself, is quite spectacular.
I just think the show was brilliant from beginning to end, and I feel like even that ending, the writing and what they were going for, they always knew what they were going for from the day one on that show.
Yep, they did.
And when I rewatch, I'm like, this show is now I got to go watch it again.
They did a great job. They wrote the last episode when they wrote the first episode. It seemed they did a great job of staying on track. So nobody picked the largest finale in television.
I know what you're going.
I never watched
there.
MASH.
I have it on my list just in case I needed to resort to it because I remember the finale, but I didn't really watch the show as religiously. I probably would like it now, but.
Yeah, I never watched it. I didn't even think of putting it on here, but I guess if I was trying to win the poll, that's what I should have done is put MASH on there. And
I couldn't be disingenuous enough to put it on my list. I mean, I watched
as a kid,
MASH, but sporadically.
It was on in syndication, and my dad and my brother watched it, and it always just rubbed me the wrong way as a little kid, the music, and and so I never wanted to watch it because the vibe I got as an 8-year-old was like I just wasn't interested.
It is a funny show, and it's a comedy, but it's also very deep, and so it doesn't appeal to a 5-year-old kid or whatever year it was for us, and so that's why I didn't get into it. It wasn't like your typical sitcom comedy.
The one that I have highlighted on my list that I did not pick was the Queen's Gambit. That final episode and that final shot of her walking down the street in that white.
Count though.
What's that?
There's a season 2. There's a season 2 coming.
Oh, that is true.
There is.
Yes, I'm glad I did pick it. I forgot there was a season 2 coming out.
Yeah,
that's true.
It was a great ending to the season.
Yes. Yeah, sure. I forgot. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, that would have been bad because I was caught between that and Band of Brothers for my last one.
My top 9 were all picked. I brought up a show last week that I thought was, again, a great Netflix show with a great ending, Atypical. I'm going to throw out another plug for that show. I had Ozark. Ozark finished, I thought, really strong this year. And Barry as well. Very, very dark. It's not one you probably want to watch a lot, but, I mean, it was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of 2 shows that I quit, well, I didn't actually ever quit watching The Office, but my God, it was a slog at the end. But the finale was good.
The way they did it, yeah.
I had that on my list.
That's one where you could skip the last 2 seasons, but watch.
Right, yeah, you could come in and watch that last episode and still feel like it wrapped up the series well, with the documentary.
Did you hear me say Modern Family?
No.
You cut out for a second there. So
okay. That's another one where I didn't watch the last probably 3 seasons, but I did watch the finale because I loved that show so much for years. Mm-hmm. And the finale was great. It was another one where it was a great ending.
Sure.
So that was all the ones I had considered.
I had Sopranos on my list. Of course, everybody talks about the finale there with the going to black. The other one I had was The Good Place. I thought they did a wonderful job wrapping up that show and kind of finding acceptance in the afterlife. And it was a really sweet ending to that show. They did a great job.
All right.
Any
The
more,
ones
Pete?
I don't think anybody mentioned Family Ties.
No, I don't remember how it ended.
I don't really remember it, but I remember it being very emotional and tearful.
Yeah.
And again, I remember the curtain call very well. That was like a pretty famous one.
I would expect that was a very good one.
I did have Fresh Prince because I remember him standing there in the empty house.
Well, that's like a GIF now that you see all the time. So yeah, that's a good one.
Well, yeah, but at the time, and yeah, it's probably gotten overplayed as a GIF. I had I didn't know if you could count this or not, and that's kind of why I didn't pick it. But I had Arrested Development because it was the original series finale. But that's not counting the Netflix follow. But so I didn't pick it, but it was on my list in case I needed to go to it. That's all I had.
All right.
All right.
All right, Gifford. Oh, well, that will close the yearbook on 1990. Thank you for the reminder, Gifford.
What are we going to open to next time?
Ooh, what do we got?
I don't even remember.
2014?
No, 2004.
2004.
2004.
Oh,
sorry.
It had a 4.
20 years ago.
You're only off by 1.
Doesn't feel like it, does it, honey?
Yeah, so that'll be good. We got some good stuff coming for that, and of course next week we'll dive into our top 5 movies and television and
we'll take you back 20 years to our memories and all the stuff that you might have remembered from that time.
Yeah, hopefully remind you of some things you may have forgotten.
Hey, Gifford, what band do you think has a great opening intro, kind of like Newhart?
I would say Preacher Row.
That's right.
Go with a finale there, not an intro.
Well, it's because I didn't know exactly where to go with it. I
Yeah.
didn't know exactly where to go with that, but because we talked about the great introduction music
Yes.
to Newhart, that's what I could go with. So here they are. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
You know, you guys should really wear more sweaters.
Standing on my own 2 feet. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your song is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. Hands tied, tell me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared, but there's nothing I can do.